In a few days, a new man walks into the most powerful economic institution in America. For the first time in 8 years, the Federal Reserve has a new chairman, Kevin Warsh, and in few days, he chairs his very first meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee. The meeting that decides whether your mortgage rate goes up, comes down, or stays exactly where it's been, crushing you for months. Here's what the mainstream headlines will tell you this week. Rates held, no change. And they'll be right. But that is not the story. The story is who this man is, what he believes, what he promised, and what he's walking into. With inflation at 3.8%, energy costs surging, and millions of Americans who were told repeatedly that relief was coming. By the end of this video, you'll understand what's actually happening in that room on June's meet day, and more importantly, what it means for your money for the rest of this year. Let's go 2 years back. In 2024, the Federal Reserve was sending a clear signal. Rate cuts were coming, multiple of them. The painful chapter of expensive borrowing was supposed to be ending. Wall Street priced it in. Financial media celebrated. And millions of ordinary Americans made real decisions based on that promise. They waited to buy a home, held off on refinancing, told themselves just a few more months. Here's where we are right now. The Fed's target rate 3.50 to 3.75%, held there since April. Inflation, as of the latest reading, 3.8% year over year, the highest it's been since 2023. Energy costs up 17.9%, a direct hit to every American who drives, heats their home, or buys anything that gets shipped. And markets are pricing in a 95+% probability that this week's meeting results in nothing, no cut, no move. Hold. Let's make that number human. Americans are carrying $1.28 trillion in credit card debt right now. The average balance is nearly $8,000. The average interest rate on that balance is 21.5%. That's over $1,700 a year, just in interest on a balance most people built buying groceries, paying for a car repair, covering a medical bill, not a vacation, essentials. And if you've been waiting to buy a home, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate as of this week is 6.53%. That means on a $400,000 home, you're paying roughly $800 more per month than someone who bought in 2020. Not $800 more over the life of the loan. $800 more every single month. A recent Gallup survey found that a record 55% of Americans say their financial situation is getting worse, not better. That's not a fringe number. That's more than half the country. And this is the environment Kevin Warsh walks into for his very first meeting as Fed chairman, which raises the obvious question: who is this man and what is he actually going to do? Kevin Warsh is 56 years old, Harvard Law, Stanford Public Policy. Started his career at Morgan Stanley doing mergers and acquisitions. In 2006, he became the youngest person ever appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, just 35 years old. He sat in that room during 2008, the financial crisis, emergency decisions made in real time as Lehman Brothers collapsed and the global financial system nearly came apart. That experience shapes how he thinks. After leaving the Fed in 2011, he became known as a hawk, someone who believed in keeping rates higher to keep inflation contained. Then something shifted. In recent years, Warsh became more vocal about cutting rates. He called for, and this is a direct quote, regime change at the Fed. He criticized it for being too slow, too data dependent, too political. Trump nominated him. The Senate confirmed him 54-45, the most divisive Fed confirmation vote in history. One Democrat crossed the aisle to make it happen. Senator Elizabeth Warren called him a sock puppet for Trump during the hearing. Warsh told the Senate he made no promises to Trump about cutting rates. He emphasized Fed independence. He said, and again, this is his own word, the Fed must be unharnessed from politics. So now you have a man with a genuinely contradictory identity, sitting in the most powerful monetary policy seat in the world. Historically hawkish, recently dovish, nominated by a president who has demanded lower rates publicly and loudly, confirmed by a razor-thin margin, and inheriting an inflation rate at 3.8%. Which version of Kevin Warsh shows up on June 17th? That's the real story. But here's what you need to understand about how this actually works. Warsh is one of 12 voting members. He can't unilaterally cut rates. He needs consensus. And right now, that committee is split. Some members are open to cuts. Others, with inflation above 2% for 5 straight years, are reportedly open to a hike. Warsh's first job isn't to cut rates. It's to prove to a skeptical committee and skeptical markets that his decisions are driven by data, not by a phone call from the White House. And that's exactly why this week he almost certainly holds. But here's the part that actually matters for your money. This meeting doesn't just produce a rate decision, it produces the dot plot. The summary of economic projections, updated 4 times a year, released alongside the June decision. Every dot on that chart is an anonymous forecast from one Fed official, where they think rates will be at the end of this year, next year, and further out. The rate decision tells you what the Fed does today. The dot plot tells you what they think is coming. And under a new chairman, the first dot plot is a signal, a declaration of intent. If those dots shift higher, if Warsh's first meeting produces a projection of rates staying elevated longer, that alone tightens your financial conditions without a single rate hike. Mortgage rates nudge up, borrowing costs stay high. The waiting continues. So, when the headlines say Fed holds on June 17th, flip straight to the dot plot. That's where Warsh tells you who he really is. Now, the real reason rates aren't dropping, and it goes deeper than the inflation data. In the 1970s, Federal Reserve Chairman Arthur Burns made one of the worst policy mistakes in American economic history. He cut rates before inflation was truly beaten. Inflation came back harder, broader, more entrenched. It took Paul Volcker hiking rates to 20% to finally kill it, and that cure nearly broke the economy. That scar never healed inside the institution. Warsh knows this better than almost anyone. He sat in that building during 2008 and watched what happens when the Fed acts too early, moves too fast, or is perceived as capitulating to political pressure. Here's what the Fed understands that almost nobody talks about. Its entire power comes from one thing: credibility. The Fed doesn't actually control the economy with tools. It controls it with beliefs, with the market's conviction that when the Fed says something, it means it. If Warsh cuts rates at 3.8% inflation, with Trump visibly celebrating, the market learns something dangerous. It learns that Fed decisions are negotiable, that political pressure works. And once that credibility is gone, it doesn't come back quietly. It comes back with Volcker-level pain. So Warsh holds, not just because the data says to, but because his first meeting is an audition. Every market participant in the world is watching to see if he's his own man. But here's the layer beneath that, the one that actually explains the distribution of pain in this economy. High interest rates are not equally painful. If you hold significant financial assets, money market funds, short-term treasuries, high-yield savings accounts, elevated rates are working in your favor right now. Money market funds are yielding 4 to 5%. Treasury bills are paying more than inflation. The people who own assets are being cushioned. The people carrying debt, the 175 million Americans with credit cards, auto loans, adjustable mortgages are absorbing the full weight of this policy. And that's exactly what the data shows. A record 55% of Americans say their finances are getting worse. Meanwhile, corporate earnings remain resilient. Asset prices stay elevated. Wealth at the top continues to grow. The Fed's policy isn't failing. It's working precisely as monetary policy distributes its costs unevenly and downward. Warsh inherits that reality, and his first press conference on June 17th will tell you whether he intends to address it or simply manage it. So, what do you actually do with all of this? 3 things, right now, regardless of what the dot plot says on June 17th. 1. Lock in high-yield savings rates before Warsh moves. Right now, high-yield savings accounts and short-term CDs are paying 4 to 5%. Warsh has signaled he believes AI-driven productivity will eventually give the Fed room to cut. That day will come. When it does, those rates disappear fast. The moment a cut is telegraphed, savings rates start dropping immediately. Any cash sitting in a regular checking or savings account right now is losing ground to inflation every single day. Move it. 2. Eliminate variable rate debt aggressively. At 21% interest, credit card debt in a high-rate environment is the most expensive money in America. This isn't about discipline or willpower. It's arithmetic. Every month you carry that balance, the Fed's policy is taxing you directly. If you can't pay it down immediately, consolidate into a fixed personal loan, currently averaging around 12%, and lock that rate before conditions change. 3. Watch Warsh's press conference language, not the rate decision. On June 17th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Kevin Warsh holds his first press conference as Fed chair. The financial media will spend 48 hours on the rate decision, which you already know is a hold. You want two things from that press conference. First, does he acknowledge that the burden of high rates is falling disproportionately on working Americans, or does he speak only in abstract macro terms? Second, does the dot plot shift higher, lower, or hold steady for 2026 and 2027. Those two data points tell you more about the next 12 months of your financial life than anything else that comes out of that building. A new chairman, the same impossible math. 3.8% inflation, rates at 3.5 to 3.75. A president publicly demanding cuts, a committee with members quietly open to hikes, and 55% of Americans whose finances are getting worse, waiting for a relief that keeps not arriving. Kevin Warsh walks into that room on June 16th. Watch what he says on June 17th. Not what the headline says he did, what he said, because the dot plot and that press conference will tell you exactly how long this chapter really lasts. I'll break it all down the moment it drops, right here. Until then, stay sharp. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want us to go deeper on any of topics, drop it in the comments. Subscribe to Dollar&Demand. We are here to give you the analysis that actually matters. Those two data points tell you more about the next 12 months of your financial life than anything else that comes out of that building.